Welcome, everybody. Vuvuzelas abound. We're here. You're here for the grand experiment, the grand party. We got me and Jeff Lewis, aka GP3 Lewis on Twitter. Me, Wendell. I'm just Wendell. I got no tag, no nothing. Straight no chaser. And we're here to sort of jam around the topic. As we're recording this project has no title. It is titleless. It's going to show up. We are showing up to play this game of what does it mean to be. It's kind of like a little riff on the art of living, life as art, creativity as praxis. Like, how do we, with this big pile of nonsense called the internet, meet our actualization needs in a way that doesn't have us looking like fucking dorks?
Meet our actualization needs via not looking like dorks.
Yes. Via not profaning the creative spark that's like emerging through us. The thing we do know is that the episode title is what we talk about when we talk about like art and creativity and value. And I think those are, as a triangle of idea, enough. It's worth it to go there because I know it's spicy. I'm in a little mischievous mode. I know Jeff has some feelings about value. And so we're setting the world stages. We're saying, all right, here's the North Pole, South Pole, West Hemisphere. And hopefully this will be an episode that people will be able to come back to be like, these guys are on one. Where the hell did they start? They can roll up here and they're like, okay, I agree, disagree. There's an emergent coherence, but we're not like seeking it. We're gonna each hold our integrity, have the conversations that we wish would happen, and then start making like bids for inviting people along some sort of ride, you know?
Yeah, the invitation is everything. I mean, I think any two people are capable of this, right? I mean, I would say that I'm a 4-year-old boy with over 30 years of experience. Senior staff, little mischievous boy, knows all the tricks of the trade and understands perception, dare I say, understands game dynamics. I can see through people's surface and I can look right into their programming, right into the script. And it's like, I'm watching you perceive me. And I know what you're listening for because I know what you're afraid of. And I know what you love. I know what you want. I know what you dread. And I match my performance to your desire matrix. And in that way, you know, I mean, it's why it's been said that poets are the secret legislators of reality. Because they know how things really work underneath in the silence, because that's where they live. Mm-hmm. It's a very quiet life of listening so sincerely and looking so hard at every shape and every color, every tree, every branch, every insect. And like every day you're just studying what reality is. And I guess you love it so much, you sort of like fall through the surface into the substance and you live forever. I mean,
yes. Well, that's the beautiful thing, and that's one of the paradoxes that I was interested in teasing out, is that like I saw someone say this thing, heard someone say this thing the other day that I totally resonated with, which is art is the timeless. Like the reason that art slaps is that it's like, great, you see it and it brings you out of time. When people are mad at the modern artists for writing like a blank black shape, right. It's like, here's the thing, you're going for artist craft, dope. Craft implies lineage, it doesn't imply time. That's beautiful. That's definitely like a cool thing to play with, but even their provocation at the thing pulls them out. And if you knew that someone had reproduced that original thing, it wouldn't pull you out. Suddenly now it's in lineage again. For some reason, there still is this activation of the original provocation that like stays. Even just hearing the story about it. I said words just now, and we all went to that one MoMA painting or our own encounter with like modern art where we either were like, yes, I got it, or we went to our own fuddy-duddy man. But even then it's like, when is that? Where is that? And how do you establish value in the timeless, when so much of our value systems, I'm going to put my business as art hat on, when people like ask me or imply that they're skeptical of like how I make business in my trade as like a life coach, is I'm like, I'm not here to really teach anyone anything so much as get them to a result faster. Like everyone who wants to know this shit, like could read all the books that I did and could have had a life experience such where it was necessary for them to bounce against the obstacles that sort of showed up for me. It's accessible. If it's accessible for one, it's accessible for the all. But in this weird game where we've decanted into bodies that do seem to age for some reason, there is this benefit that happens when you're like, oh, the old master took 40 years to get here, and under their tutelage, I saved 20, and then maybe might add a few rocks to the knowledge itself. That's one of the things that I really hope for, is that like, I get very burdened. There's a part of myself that is like a technologist at heart. And I get burdened by the fact that like, when you create the technology, you own nothing of what is produced by it, for good or for ill. I think about the Manhattan Project a lot, where it's like, those motherfuckers were doing science. They were trying to understand more about reality, and they stumbled upon a part of it that told us how to shred realities. And it's like the Oppenheimer movie that's about to come out is like, if you want to talk by numbers of people killed in like a single instant and tie it back to lineage, causality, that man's like a mass murderer. But when you look at like the craft of science of figuring out how reality works, like the way that you brought up earlier with the poetics, is like, both are happening. And my own fear, but also deep excitement at like what happens on the other side of someone like taking my tools, peering within their own inner world, and they bring out, hopefully it isn't something that destroys everything, but it is that fear of the person who makes the meta tools, or even the material, or even like pointing at like the interiority of it, is like, okay, you know, you've got your canvas, and I invented a new color of blue, or discovered it, or maybe just interfaced with it, or brought it into awareness. What responsibility do I have towards what gets painted with that? Is it absolutely zero? Is it a harmony of both? Those are the tensions that I think sort of emerge as people start looking at their own value, because once you take that credit for the value, then you also take credit for what's done with it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole credit system, I mean, I really spend so little time in credit world, except, you know, I mean, how it feels to write. I mean, I think I'm such a maker, and like, even though we're in this crypto Web3 world, it's like, it's all just ancient. Like I really keep my eyes on the ancient. I really act as if it's thousands of years ago. And I've kept an ignorance about computer science. So I took an AP course in high school about it, and I've thought about it a lot. I've worked in tech in a sense, you know, as a marketer, as a recruiter, but mostly watching, you know. I had enough hellish experiences in the workplace to have distilled the pattern. So now it's like, okay, I actually don't need to go drown in more email and barking orders and wanting to make the number go up, because I get it. I get it. I got the message. I can hang up the phone. And I can stand to the side and watch and sort of triangulate what's happening, and make meaning out of that. There's a good word, see if I can quote it all the way from memory. Noegenesis, I think, is the word, which is to infer knowledge about things by, triangulating known things.
Yeah, it's the logical function of the creative. I call that the moment that happens before the transformation. The example that I always give is twofold. It's that dumb fish that decided to hop on land. I think about that fish all the time because it's an abstraction. There wasn't one fish. There was millions and millions of fishes, but the moment of miracle, like, okay, a non-linear process has just occurred and everything is different forever. There is a finitude of that moment, and it exists in all of our collective imaginations. Even if you don't think about it, the second I talk about that fish, everyone knows what the fuck I'm talking about. And I can expand that too. It's like, we know it wasn't one fish. No one fish got out of his house and was like, you know what, fuck water. They had no concept for water. That's why that joke is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then they eat it into some new experience. There's one, but the second is also the peanut butter jelly experience. That's the thing I think about all the time. Where like we had peanut butter, we had jelly 5 ever. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich as one thing has always existed platonically. It just to the right of reality. And one day someone was like, bruh, wait, if I can hold this in my interior space just long enough to not stop laughing at myself, to not laugh at the sheer absurdity of this, because that's a real savory flavor. Like peanut butter is not a sweet experience in its OG. I think we've sweetened it up after peanut butter and jelly. I think the OG peanut butter was meant to be a savory vegetal experience, and then jelly rolled up and was like, hello, what's up? And now we add corn syrup to our peanut butter because it's like, well, if you end up with it by itself, you still want to vaguely remember jelly.
Reminiscent.
You don't want it to be too far away from each other. Now that it's
that's sad how we change ourselves and make ourselves unhealthy and worse just because we want to remember our old lovers so much. Oh man, we just knifed ourselves, bro. God dang.
Yeah, but it is that place of how much random, I'm going to go to the computer example just for funsies, how much random access memory can we hold in ourselves to hold the random new thing that emerges? Because you can't do it when you're in survival mode. If you're in survival mode, you know, there's a few opportunities where it's like desperate times, desperate measures will roll up for that, but I don't think that was peanut butter and jelly. And I don't think there was a crisis of ocean that created the need to go on land. I think that is the dreamer. That is an idea has fallen through the portal and clunked on the head of the thing who is to bear the next world. And we're talking Truman Show shit here now. We're talking like, oh, the lamp fell. The fuck is a lamp? Lamps don't.
Right.
What?
Right. Yeah. I mean, these names, these labels, these definitions we have, I mean, eventually you have to choose. And by eventually, I mean, right now, every second, forever, you have to choose to go back to the record and the knowledge and look for the precedent, or do you dare to look at the tree, look at the carrot, look at the pink sticky note with some Sharpie scribbled on it, and to look for yourself and to say, what is that? What is that? And then you know, in your own words, this is the magic of doing things in your own words, alongside and simultaneous with the knowledge, the record, the schools and corporations and governments, those enemies, God bless them, God bless those structures we can't and maybe shouldn't and maybe won't tear down, because there's no tearing down, right? I mean, what's funny about a chat like this is, I mean, this is probably activism 101 and passion 101 of let's sit down, let's, you know, break bread on time, in time, and go through all the things that are wrong and that we need to change and that we're against. And then we walk out that room with our list. And then everything really, then you really get tested. Then we're really in praxis mode of.
Then the bell rings and the big beefy fucker is like, oh, you're here? And you're like, wham.
Right. And then it's like, well, do you love the mission and vision enough to go home with a bloody nose and say, you know, and I mean, some of our favorite gifts, you know, Alonzo Mourning and Gary Payton on the Miami Heat, lost by 30. I love that gif. I love that moving image of just like, damn, we got whooped.
Yep.
Damn. And it's like that's part of the game. That's part of the journey.
The pile, and I jammed about this before we hit record, about this sort of like emergent reclamation of a very specific masculine energy in art and creation, and I want to keep space for it because like the way that this resonates with certain lessons I've been told. Like first, my boy Dre, who I just podcasted with a few days ago, he would always say, if you fall in love with the fight, you can't lose. Love it. It's beautiful. It's poetic. Grow up, nice. You're like, if you're taking the licks, but like, you know, thank you, sir. May I have another sir? There is very like Pressfieldian war of art sort of aspect. And honestly, if we are to keep the memetics of war, art of war, war of art, if we know we've got to keep that's not going anywhere, being able to sublimate it into things that do make a better world instead of just doing more war to the world, that feels like a certain type of kindness. And there's something about the choice. You said it earlier, and I want to do a brief reframe on it. We have to choose, and this is a big thing for me as a game player. It's like we do choose, and the choices are our power. There's that scene in the Matrix Revolutions that lives rent free in my brain. Thousands, potentially millions of Smiths in the rain are just giving Neo the business. Just like, it's cool for a while, but like 20 minutes into the fight, you're like, oh, this dude's gonna lose. And suddenly you're like, how is this gonna resolve itself? And he sees it, and Smith's just like, why do you do it, Mr. Anderson? Why do you get up?
Why do you get
fighting
up?
for some higher purpose? Is it love? Is it honor? Do you even know? Can you tell me? It's absurd. All of these are meaningless concepts. I mean, he goes full existential on it. And the line, which ends up being the thesis of the entire Matrix trilogy, Neo gets up, does his cool little hand thing, and he goes, because I choose to.
Yeah.
And that shit hits every single time. And I've been reading, of course, it's right next to me, my boy James P. Carse, Finite Infinite Games. If you have to play, you can't play. And so that
coercion doesn't work. Like when you said earlier, you sort of you debunked your own coaching branding, which is good. We're now down into the liquid molten metal, copper and bronze of what our business really is, and we dare to melt the statue, because that's actually what we know we'd have to do if we are this coach, if we are this, I don't like the word guru, but I like how Alan Watts uses it, and sort of, he says like the only end game left is, my guru is better than your guru, my yoga is faster than your yoga, right? I mean, like in a sense, we are in a world of hell of, well, we have these 15 hours every day, and we've trained ourselves on computers to be transactional and transformational at a very, very fast clip, right? I mean, it's clear that your mind and my mind race night and day. And, it's 10,000 words a day. I mean, it's like, my mind is a podcast going all the time. And so it's nice to bring it here to base recorded content reality, even if the subject of what we're talking about is, I know I'm trapped here, and I actually want to free whatever myself is from the image on screen and the fruitless, endless uphill climb to, I don't know if it's get more money, get more fans, followers, love. Like I'm really trying, and I think this is going to be my salvation, is actually trying. That's all you can do, is try and dare, is smash the thing that represents success and salvation, and realize that all there is you and me and the others, us, we, solidarity, togetherness. And it's like, you have a choice. You can either try to smash concepts, but eventually it's like, stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Open up, tune in to this thing that's in here. And
the thumper. I mean, if we want to go full Judeo-Christian mysticism, that could be the summation of Jacob and the angel. It's like, bruh, stop hitting yourself. But also, good on you for even trying to hit yourself. Why do you think this large being that's decanted into reality, slightly taller and more luminous than you, is any less than you? Don't worry. Here's how you know. It's the one that fucked up your hip. It's the one that could take a choice that you couldn't take. And this is actually what I want to jam to, the why of it all. Like, why get the money? Why get the yada, yada, yada?
Right.
It's for choice. If that choice moment that Neo is saying is because I choose to have the awareness of the choice, the only thing, aside from just, again, this meat suit does need to run and money can be used to buy goods and services. And one of the things that I run this on is food and shelter and etc. But let's even take that aside. And I think about this a lot when I think about wealth, which I try not to think too hard about, but it is important if you are a creative person to at least be able to monkey around with. I've got people who will go full existentialism stuff, and I'll be like, look at your bank account, my friend. And they'll be like, well, I can't look at that. I'm like, you looked into the void for 40 hours last week.
We'll talk about that after this episode, because I'm at the brink.
Yes.
after this, we'll like maybe I will earn some coaching through doing this. We'll say, okay, God, okay, are you done? 4-year-old boy running around. Let's actually look at your stats. It's like, I don't wanna. I know you don't wanna. You have to. Let's do it. Okay. Fine.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to, but essentially you've circumnavigated the forest enough that it's like the one thing you haven't seen is the thing in the forest. You've done loops around it.
Yeah.
The one thing that's not there. But it's I do find this yearning inside of me. It's a very shadowed place, but I try to honor it. A rich person can choose to be poor in a way that a poor person can't choose to be rich. It's a different set of choices. I got to roll the dice a bunch of times. And so I am less so of even like the fun things I could buy with it. I mean, that could be a fun thing. That's great. I do like that. But it's really at an existential level, like I can't choose this poverty from that altitude, and they can. And there's a part of me that wants to roll up there and be like, let me show you what this looks like.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think rich people have to find their poverty. And these days, with the internet, with news, it's actually very hard to be successful because you don't get to relax. So what's funny is this distinction is actually already smashed, because if you've won, I mean, if you're, anyone we could name, it's like more success and achievement just leads to more capability. And eventually, if you're anywhere over a certain age, people aren't gonna like you to say, look at my ability, look how great I am. It's like, okay, like do something with it. It's like okay, great. Like if you can go win championships on the basketball court or football or baseball field, go do it. And then get in a tux, go on stage and say what it's for. And I think if we're gonna stay in the masculine realm for just another few moments, like it's about women and children. It's about teaching, it's about loving, ideally about, I mean, we can go, I mean, let's open the can on marriage and families and neighborhoods and communities and cities, and laddering up to governments that, I'm glad that airline pilots aren't artists like me. I'm glad that they are governed by very strict laws and regulations that are constantly improving, and that they're very subject to that scientific voice, right? I mean, I think science is also a thing I sort of stand to the side of and like watch askance through my own lens that I've constructed. And I keep believing that my magical perception is my way to the whole. Right, rather than any straight career path into the hole, it's like I'm going way, 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 way out, and then way back around and back in through the side door and climbing through the window, and there I am. And it's like,
it's a beautiful thing. You can't, and I think you might have reflected this to me. And if you didn't, I'm just gonna say it because it's a rich nutrient soup here. You cannot run your humanity, so it's a safe place to go gonzo. Because where are you gonna go to? You're never gonna get out of the house. You
can't get lost. So. You can't make a mistake. That's the wild thing. Is like no one needs this podcast. No one needs our coaching because no one can make a mistake. Making a mistake is the way. It's the way that you and I. It's like we are only here because of our mistakes, and so now we are here in the winner's circle or the loser's circle or the striving, trying circle. I'm not sure what to call us yet.
I mean, you could give it a name, but again, it'll be pointing at the moon. But I like what you said. I'm gonna do a busty poetic thing. No one needs us. Odysseus, when he gets to Ithaca, they ask him, who are you? And he says, I am no one.
Yeah.
It's the Odyssey, the people on the Odyssey who need us. But the second that you get to the end of the Odyssey, you realize that you are no one. And even if you're hearing this, you're like, this is fun, this is interesting, this is weird. It's gonna ping against a part of you who desperately needs us to be wrong about how much they think they need us. And it's like, that'll be a real fun day. That'll be a real hilarious day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like this leads me to think about the banality of genius, the banality of being great, right? It's like, there's nowhere to, it's like once you and I realize that we are as good as the greats, that like the way that I speak and write is like, oh, like that's as like I'm speaking and thinking in the same way that the people I've admired for so long have been writing. It's like once you're there, it's like, okay, like then it's just about like responsibility for your own talents, I guess. And it's like like in a sense, like the show is over.
Yes,
And it's like
well,
I can't go sell, like I'm even bored of selling my potential and saying, look at me. It's like, well, congratulations, you've been here monkeying around every Monday for the last 1,000 Mondays. Like, we get it. There's no one to sell, there's nothing to prove, there's nothing to hide. You can't make a mistake. There's
but the game is
no way to be enough because there's no end to the swim. It's
yes.
a circle.
But it is the artist, and I'm going to hold us to this space. I'm going to hold the artist zone of just like, okay, you've got the blank canvas. Why do you make the art that you make? Partially is that like you can vaguely see out of your left fairy eye what's already on the canvas, and you're writing that down. On the other hand, it is the Alan Watts. It's the, well, for whatever reason, when I look inside myself, I have a vague preference for this bit of nonsense jazz. And what the thing that's been coming alive for me, especially from the craft standpoint, we talked about this in the DMs, is that you're absolutely right. Once you realize that you have the same value as any human on the planet, and even on top of it, that your ability to manipulate words as a poet, your ability to put digital paint or physical paint to recreate an object slaps at the level of someone at a different performative cultural success level than you, suddenly the room changes. Suddenly a new craft emerges where it's like, well, clearly there is a reality craft of hanging out next to or being in certain space or leveraging skill sets. Suddenly your talent doesn't become the product, your talent becomes the paintbrush to a whole new fucking game.
Yeah, your presence becomes, well, yeah, this is what makes the Matrix an interesting thing. I watched, this was about last holiday season, I watched the most recent one, might have been number 4. And there's a line in there that's like, neither of you are very valuable on your own. You know, you're this very spicy, like acid thing, and you're just very like basic, you know, like other thing. And it's like, you can't do anything on your own. But it's about when you get there, everything changes. And it's like, I think we're maybe here on Earth and making art. Maybe we make art because it's like, I refuse to be alone. I've been alone a long time. I think I get the pattern now. Now, the only thing that interests me is how I'm different from others. And I guess seeking surprise, which is really what atoms do. If you go into chemistry, all they want to do is get surprised. They drift towards surprise. It's like, where am I as this lonely, this oxygen atom? Where can I go get surprised? Ooh, flame. And it's like, that's why like the moth goes to the flame, and it's like, you know what? They don't need to understand why they do it. They just know it feels good. Which is how irresponsible sex happens. And a lot of babies get popped out, and they cause, you know, population crises, supposedly, because some people don't think as much, you know, people who, and again, I'm othering myself, but you can reel me back in if you need to.
I'm interested in it. I got to know what it is before I reel you back in.
If I get too lost and sad, you just throw your line and I'll bite it.
We got a rule back in the Tone podcast. It was for me specifically. It's like, Wendell's only allowed to go 3 levels deep. 4th, it's wibbly wobbly nonsense. So I try to do that for others. It's not always 3 for each person. It does seem like each person has their own, but you can kind of see it in their eyes where I'm like, oh, you're not looking at the room anymore. You're somewhere else. And my job's
you've gone to another place.
Like,
come back.
Fascinating.
But what's also true is like, what's 9th level, right? Like if 4th is like wibbly wobbly, like, can you keep going down to another place? And then you realize, oh, level 9 is level 0. I wanted level 0 the whole time. There it was.
I mean, here's the thing. There's 2 pieces in here if we're going to talk about art, and I definitely want to riff on the
asterisk over here. We're 2 bars down over here. There's a spicy
dissolution.
There's a spicy bubbly.
I'm with it. I think I got it. I've got the acid base. I've got the seeking dissolution and the moth and the flame. I've got it, and I think I can alchemize that into something. Don't you worry, because this is the question that comes up.
This is the sport of tracking active asterisks and active storylines, and it's like this is like, yeah. I mean, this is like this is an esport. Like, I've watched videos of like the esport players playing, you know, and I mean, you probably know this better than I do, but like how scientific you can get about like dividing time. These strategy games, you can get so strict about your strategy and so micro to as much as you can catastrophize. The deepest you can, I mean, it's like chess.
Yep.
The deepest you can
always pop out
catastrophize.
though and recognize, and especially in esports, especially in chess, you can never lose the aspect that you are a player. The second that you lose that aspect, chess is not chess anymore. Chess is just a very strange, abstract war. Chess is just,
Wow.
it's some. I mean, there's a whole
Well,
musical.
war only makes sense if you got skin in the game.
Skin in the game. There's a whole
And
musical by the ABBA people called Chess, and it's about the Cold War, and they use the whole. They stretch it to absurdity. But I want to take it to this place because this is an important place. So a lot of the stuff that I do is role-playing game. Role-playing game invites itself to talk about parts work, the IFS. That's a meme that's running around in this thing called Teapot, is that people are like, let's do parts work. And I'm like, honestly, I don't care why you get to it. It's a good fucking idea because it is one of the hedges against the dissolution of self, because it's just like, well, if I'm holding multitudes, all I've got to do is pattern match a multitude inside of myself that I see in someone else. I don't even need the whole thing to interface. I just need enough bits to be able to be a semi-permeable membrane for connection. And it's no longer, you have to completely purposefully fit neurochemically with my deal versus, okay, how can I hold with the least tension my own partiality to show up to someone's assumed wholeness? This shit happens to me all the time. Someone will be like, I'm this way. And I'll be like, I know that that is a fucking farce, but I can't tell you that way. That'll be psychic damage to you to tell you that you're actually made of bits. Instead, I will bring on the stage the part of me that I'm like, I remember being that. I remember that. That was dope. Let's see what you have to do with it. Is there a compassionate, generative
summon your past
plane to bring into awareness to talk to this person? The answer is yes. But even that game takes you to a really odd place. Some people might hear me talk about it and then go, well, that sounds condescending. I'm like, sort of, in the same way that something above me decanted down into here. When I do my inner work and I'm building worlds and I'm playing role-playing games, I'm decanting down into the inner worlds of people that I know and have memories of having made up. At a certain point, the art of self-having is the art of deletion, of choice, of how can I be in smallness without doing self-hatred? I'm not doing it as an act of hatred.
Wow.
An act of love. I'm like, this person cannot receive the wholeness of me. To do so would be to crack them open over my knee. And that's not a kindness. I actually do have to play the game of smallness to reach out to them. Here's the thing. The only way to do that in a way that seems ethical, that makes the game seem alive, is that I have to not simultaneously imagine a smallness that also has infinite depth. Because they're going to ping that thing for, are you a real person? Do you have interiors? Can I pass your Turing test? And it's like, here's the thing. I can make you pass your Turing test. But the fact that I had to get small so that you could see me means you'll never see anything outside of that smallness.
Wow.
And so simultaneously, the condescension comes from the fact that, like, how much energy do you have to watch someone crack open by being your whole self? And how much kindness can you hold by being small to, like, meet someone in what you have to assume is their honesty? When someone says, I am this way, I could be like, nah. Or I could be like, tell me more about that. And what's the easeful place to be in that tell me more about that zone that also allows someone the feeling of camaraderie? And then how do you also recognize, like, the edge of your own ability to do camaraderie? The crazy thing is, it's those tensions that tell you where the edge is. It's that space where it's like, this person's challenging me. I don't know. This is the thing. It's like, that's the layer. That's the layer of where you can choose to expand to meet this person. And this is the sort of cultural insanity that we're dealing with right now. We can't tell the difference between up and down. So when I meet that tension layer, it's either, oh, I'm too big, I must shrink to fit like that container, or something larger is here, I have to grow to expand it. And the real game, if ever there was one, is, can you do both at the same time? Because you'll never know. Or either it'll take two data points, sort of measure twice, cut once, to know which one it is, unless you can do both at the same time. And then you don't have to measure twice, cut once. You can just always be cutting once. But when someone asks you what you're doing, you'll have to just kind of laugh, because you can't do that and talk about it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of the theater and improv and what I just wrote down in my notes, kindness and fierceness. right?
Ooh.
Because I think that, it reminds me of, I think it was the Picasso quote, the destructive urge is a creative urge as well. So it's
Mm.
like and it's like love sometimes has some terror, and violence is not the right word, because then that gets really messy if you think about sexual assault. But it gets complicated when I'll try to backtrack out of the hell I stepped in.
I'll just say this,
Kindness.
just to keep the realness. I'll keep the violence. I had a whole chapter this year where I was like, I got to look at violence again, because there are some things that I'm doing that are coming from my deep center of kindness, that when I ask people to self-report their interior experience, they use words like, you cracked me open. You did all the
Yeah,
words that they're using is
there's
violent.
a violent. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I think I need a new nuanced way to talk about it, but I don't want to shy
Uh-huh.
away from it, because it does have like the
Yeah,
learning that I've learned to how to be like a healthy dungeon master, a healthy coach,
yeah.
has been, how do you use power precisely? There are certain modes where I'm like,
Ooh.
yeah, the health is, you're in a protective shell and I need you to see the limit of that power, clonk. Or
Mm.
actually, you need to know what tender touch feels like, and I can't do that if I'm in Hulk mode. I have to actually now Tai Chi style soften to even give you that experience. But that means that, like, I think the show right now that's doing a really good job of this is She-Hulk. She's the first Hulk who can actually choose to be in Hulk state or not. And suddenly every scene you see her in the show is like, is this the
That's
appropriate form?
interesting.
Is that the appropriate form? She keeps the state of mind, but can sort of shift into power or not. In Dragon Ball Z, Master Roshi, you don't find out till much later, also has this shape-shifting form. He's like this lecherous old man until he needs to do a Kamehameha,
Uh-huh.
and then turns into this super roided guy and can
Yep.
shoot a major blast. And that
Yep.
somehow there's an aspect of mastery and kindness that also is holding the space and the context and the appropriateness of that. And you can't, and this is the scary part, this is where I think the responsibility of an artist, of a value creator, of a space holder is, you can't use the self-reported experience of the person being done violence to establish, was that right action? You have to use your own self-trust.
And or precedent, who are other selves, right? That's the fun thing about knowledge. And it's like the further you go into being good, and then you stumble back out, and it's like, oh, like you're reminded of this other composer or comedian or this, and it's like, the further I go into being good, the more in tune and akin I am with them. And it's like, oh man, like what a relief, like to remember some author, some musician. And it's like, I just feel closer and closer to being just like them. And it's a really, really beautiful, and like this, and to feel that and to know it, and to know that life goes in one direction, there's no going back. This feeling, this recognition is actually better than any wealth that could be given any other way. Because I made this myself.
I want to take this spot for that, because that actually resonates very deeply in me in a way, in a part of me that I couldn't see. Because before you said that sentence, I would have been like, exact fucking opposite. I've had that experience. I've written one song in my life as a bit. Every major creative output that I've done started off as me trolling myself and just letting the bit get away from me. I even tweeted this the other day, and it's true. We used to have, sorry, Ma, if you hear this, when I was a freshman in college, we had a bong called HJ Esquire. We called it HJ Esquire because it was a double percolator. So to get all the water out, you had to do a very rambunctious hand job movement. And so HJ Esquire was the hand job
HJ
bong.
Esquire.
But at the time, and still to this day, like one of my favorite musical artists is Ben Folds. I love him. He's my favorite musical artist, especially what he's done with his career of being like angry punk boy who wishes he was punk but can only play the piano, to patron saint of like indie movie sacchariness, to now like composer, stage conductor, creator of space, and steward, mentor. It's beautiful. I love that. But he's got a very specific style of song, so much so, and this is how you know you've made it, that Weird Al did a style parody of it. Weird Al always does two types of parodies. He does the, I'm taking the song and adding new lyrics, and then his lesser known songs are the, I'm going to take a musical artist's essence and make a song about it. And so the lyrics and the music are doing an homage to it. And in my personal opinion, that is like the highest actual compliment. Like R.I.P. Coolio, he's one of the few people who didn't like himself being parodied by Weird Al, but you know, Amish Paradise is a bar.
Yeah.
He does a song by Ben Folds. He does a song that's a style parody to Ben Folds called Why Does This Always Happen to Me? The most whiny white boy anthem of just like entitlement, where he's describing like, he's like, I'm on TV and I was watching The Simpsons, but then someone cuts in with a special report and turns out there's a huge crash, everyone's dead. And the lament is, I was taping The Simpsons and now I've got to rewrite it so that I can get the thing. This whiny thing, but and then what I find out later is that Ben Folds is playing the piano on the track in the song. Like he was play the track, so he's part of the joke, he's part of the bit. I got it into my head in 2009 for some reason that I'm like, I'm enough of a Ben Folds fan that I think I can do a Ben Folds style song about H.J. Esquire. One of the other sort of traits, if I'm looking at Weird Al's like whiteboard where he's like, all right, I'm dunking on Ben Folds. Saccharine, beautiful, multi-layered power pop with piano. Great, got that. Whiny and privileged white boy shit. Great. The third thing that he left out is the thing that I would pick up, which is name. Just he writes songs just about people that aren't him. He'll come up with a name that just feels like a name. Alice Childress, Fred Jones, Amelia Bright. He just has these names, and then he'll just fill their in one song just this whole like world for these people. And so when we came up with the name H.J. Esquire, I was like, that's a fuck. Not only is that an interesting name, that's a Ben Folds parody song style name. And I wrote the song. Sort of technically, I found the lyrics. I was like with them on my ukulele and sort of playing stuff that sounded great. I didn't know how to write a song, but I know Ben Folds, so all I gotta do is just get it to sound right. The Luckiest is one of my favorite songs. I'm jamming. I'm like, let me sort of figure this out. Make it on the ukulele. I'm like, it sounds right. This is the thing. And all I had was like a chorus. It was like, we'll finish what we started. And I was like, love it. And then I had a bit of a song, took it to my friend, they helped me flesh it out, so I was like, well, I know I want the song to be nostalgic as shit. It's about a Royal Air Force pilot who's retired and has to tell the youth about what he'd seen in the war and how he's like down on his luck, a pensioner, and just this. I'm like, I've never been to, I mean, I've been to Britain, but like that's not even my culture, but like it's resonant enough that if you put like old timer war, there's memes that will fall together. Again, the song's a bit doesn't need to be like particularly fleshed out. I end up finishing this song. I end up finding out when I learned the piano, I take those ukulele chords, put on the piano, that not only did I finish the song, I'd also written the chord structure of Pachelbel's canon. Didn't know, just was playing what sounded right, and I was like, motherfucker. I was like, da 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 da, and I was like, shit. I used to get down to that 4-chord song where it's like everything's Pachelbel's canon again, and I was earnestly trying to write something that, while not unique, was doing a very specific homage. I ended up doing like half a cadence twist to make it so that it's like not completely a ripoff. But I remember, and I say all of this, this is my 3 layers deep, as you're bringing in this aspect of like, oh my God, I feel as I deepen in my craft, I get closer to the greats and I feel sort of embraced, almost Valhalla-esque. I remember finding that out and being more mad than I could ever think in my life, where I was like, are you kidding me? My pursuit for uniqueness and my closest that I've ever come to getting it has landed me in front of the most iconic fucking chord structure of all time, without even paying attention to the fact that like something about that essence of Ben Folds, that classical piano cadence, that was part of the formula that I wasn't able to digest. That's not a thing that I could see. That was something that I was still keeping away from me, even though it is a part of that aspect. If I go to Why Does This Always Happen to Me by Weird Al and I do a chord analysis on that shit, I'm gonna find some very specific like classical like homages, because everything is not unique. It's just the context. It's just the like, okay, how unoriginal am I willing to be to land this specific joke? Because if I actually achieved originality, all I'm gonna get is what our conversation start with is aloneness.
Yes.
The work resonates once you hit something that people are already prepared to interface with, and your job is to give them a novel approach to essentially the same thing, a new door that leads to that same timeless, I'm encountering good art as I conceive of it in 2022 through a Wendell Brain or through a Jeff Brain or through whoever the listeners are. we're making portals, but we're not necessarily even creating what the experience is there on the other side of us making it. In fact, the portals that we're making,
Their life is on the other
portals
side.
to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna ever be one to sell the other side. And by that I mean that, because it's like like you and I have learned the pattern, and sure, there's probably more to learn, but I think it's all surrender flavored. I think it's all patience flavored. I think it's all and like when I say that, it's like, I think a lot of young men would believe, right? Like, I think you and I, maybe as a bit, maybe as fiction, as a novel, we could write, here's the 42-point plan to use the technology from tech companies that are funded by venture capital firms, which are just run by lonely people. Shout out to VCs who are lonely. Shout out, my brothers and sisters.
Are failed
How
artists.
lonely. I'm lonely too. Are you nobody too? Now we're with Emily Dickinson. And again, it's like we're in this soup together. There's nowhere to go to prove it. And yet, we can't stop tweeting about work and money and markets on Saturday and Sunday, which is a religious and cultural and spiritual failure, because maybe we need the right kind of fathers. I think, but that's it.
Let's let that sit for a second, because we've touched on polarity in a way that I find refreshing, that I know whoever's going to randomly talk to us is going to be refreshing, and that's going to piss off a lot of people, which I think I'm okay with, because again, we're in the gonzo land. We're purposefully making anti-art, we're doing anti-value, knowing that we can't actually run far enough away from a valuable experience to escape that.
Speaking of pissing people off, and speaking of fatherhood and keeping the train on the track, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors, a little station identification, and a bathroom break. This is Jeffrey Lewis and Wendell Britt coming to you live or on tape delay, wherever you, human soul, find yourself. We met through Twitter. We met through these timeless questions that go back to the Greeks and much, much further back to the caves, say, thousands of generations. That's a long time ago, man. That's a long time ago, but the fossil record is there. And we're wondering how to get out of self, and how to make getting out of self into a job that fits in the world, even if we can see that the world is full of other desperate people. Because in 2022, everyone thinks the internet's their way out. Everyone's on TikTok saying, my job is going to be going on TikTok. I swear to God, I will turn my life into art and find a way to keep going, or die trying. I don't care. This is what the world needs. I need to confess what's in my heart. I need to name my shames. I need to name my needs. They need to get met. I must go. I must go. And it's embarrassing, and it's redundant, and it's all been done, and it's going to keep being done. And how can a parent look at that and say, God, I love you, you idiot?
but that's okay. That was a perfect setup. I read a book, A.H. Almas. He wrote a book called Brilliancy.
Entertain the people. I'm going to go for a bathroom break for a minute, unless you want to break too.
No, let's break. We can hit a pause on this. We'll break. So this is where fun, like I said, voice of the sponsors. Breathe in and breathe out for 10 seconds, everybody. So we're back. Thanks for your patience as we're figuring this out. I like the idea of like halftime. There's something aliveness in this idea of like psycho-spiritual esports. Like that feels like the closest thing that I can resonate with, of just like the resonance game happening in real time, not maskless, but like the game of mass. If this is a chessboard, it's a chessboard of parts that we've all sort of like purposefully made, and we can jam with that. But then there's always the mass wrestling, like surprise, surprise, new part comes out with the chair. But specifically, so A.H. Almas, spiritualist whose books I kind of got obsessed with last year and this year, wrote a book called Brilliancy, their approach is called the Diamond Approach. I really fucks with it because it's got scout energy. It's got the way that even when you read his stuff, it's not dialectical. It's actually all usually dialogue style. And it's usually like a pointing out experience. They do a lot of lecturing, and then someone records the lectures, and then they write it down. And then someone zhuzhes it up so it's like vaguely coherent, but it is just sort of like okay, a font got turned on and it got captured appropriately. Like, but way before podcasts were even going to be a thing. So it's a cool structure that I do think is also ancient, like the Socratic dialogues, all this stuff, really fascinating stuff. But it also been a long time since I'd found a tradition where like the whole experience, like myself was like, yeah, this is cool. I can mess with this. As someone who's inherently skeptical, I can wallflower pretty hard and need to sort of be like brought in. This person was, I don't really care about that. I'm describing a robust experience of interiority that when described to me, I was like, ooh, like the flavor of that. Almost like seeing Hey Arnold's house when I was in 4th grade and being like, his room is cool. I'm not saying he's got the answers, but like I might have a fun time also having a couch that folds out of the ceiling and listening to jazz music and stuff. Like the spiritual aesthetics of it were tasty, and so I participated in it. But where he got to with the concept of brilliancy is that he made a sort of gentlest sensualist claim, but he made it through his experience and pointing out of the flavor of it, in which he essentially said that like the heart and care and embracing was a feminine energy, that surrender where you're surrendering into the loving arms of the universe, that has sort of a capital F feminine flavor to it as a skill. But that brilliancy, clarity, intelligence, the let me look at this from a clear standpoint is the game of moving frames, the game of changing altitudes, and that somehow, while I think some people might call it a dissociative mode, that's the inherent masculine.
That's the masculine mode. Because the masculine has to navigate a sperm, has to navigate to the egg. So you're constantly, it's like, where do I have to change myself so that I can like line up the thing? I mean, it's like lining up a sniper shot, if we want to give a quick homage to the war memetics. But it's also
go to
like
Star Wars, like the trench run, 2-meter exhaust port that now you're doing with your intuition that's simultaneously a sighting, but is the merging of the heart mind. You couldn't do it with just the targeting computer. In fact, everyone's like, bruh, like, why you turn the targeting computer off? Don't worry. If I surrender into the force in this moment, the masculine, feminine, and the sort of like eunuch style warrior monk of the Jedi at its height is this sort of integration. But that while we have recognized like the overuse of the masculine in sort of creative, in sort of the fiery energy, right now we're seeing inside the internet, which is the height of marketing as a game, which is an inherent like storytelling, weaving feminine art, not to denigrate, but just to put patterns on it. A new emerging is saying like, okay, now if this is the basket, what is being put inside of it? What is being sought, hunted, seen, searched? And how do we do that with integrity? And the piece that I wanted to add, as you're even describing this, like, okay, we're on the internet. The internet's going to be our salvation. How do we sort of do this in a way that actually breaks through? The line that came to mind was, we must imagine Sisyphus happy.
Yes.
It's the same. Everyone's got the damn boulder, but the people who are going to succeed aren't even going to make more money. It's going to be like when they see their boulder, they're like, yeah, you're right. I love this.
You get
boulder.
more responsibility. I mean, it's like you have to love the climb because there's nothing else. Now to get children from maybe age, and again, like you've actually been a teacher, which I think I would love to draw out, because it's like when thinking about, education from age, 0 to 18, we can spec this out. It's like, you can't tell a 4-year-old clearly that there's nothing but more upwardness. I think a young mind can't deal with the fact that there's only improvement. They need the story or the image of closure, right? And this gets into children's books, beginning, middle, and end. Whereas really,
happily
ever after. Whereas there's no happily ever after. There's, and again, feel free to shake me from my binaries. I'm lucky to have some very mature and awesome female art and poet collaborators who often, bless their hearts and souls, are always shaking me from binaries. It's like, you stupid kid. And, luckily no physical violence, but necessary psychological tough love, which is
Yeah,
nice.
again, the
I love
violence of
the I
shaking
love
the
the
snow
divine
globe.
feminine so
Is
much.
it
Divine
an
feminine,
unkindness to is it an
I
unkindness to shake the snow globe? We buy the snow globe to shake it.
that's awesome. Um,
So you're hearing this, like you get the binary, there is this aspect of like the child state that I'm gonna add words to it that you didn't say, includes once upon a time and happily ever after. And that somehow I'm kind of hearing you say that that may even be a sort of masculine form, because when you interface with the feminine, especially feminine creativity, it's like the always ever present now. I'm gonna clean this stupid floor. I'm gonna clean it again
man.
tomorrow. I'm gonna chop this wood
All right.
tomorrow. Like there is no completion, and the masculine does
So
see completion.
yes. So here's where, and again, like there are many Twitter experiences out there. Some people's are living in 99 plus notifications in a flame war, getting attacked by the other side. I've never touched that. I've never had more than, I mean, if I have 12 notifications, it's like, wow, I'm really a genius. I really am just the shit. That's for like a world championship, right? Whereas some people, like I was about to say, I'm ready to be attacked by the feminists. And it's like, well, you want it until you've got 98 women at your door banging and screaming. And it's like, damn, why did I wish for that? I better find a side window out here somewhere. No, but I was going to maybe riff and say, well, the males can see linear time in a way females can't. I'll venture this. Come beat me up. Come shoot an arrow in my back. Come scream at me.
The best that I'll put on that is when you are in the masculine frame, the nature of the frame itself is to look at time differently. I do think people have access to both, but like when you're there in the same way. It's like when you're in 4th grade mode versus when you're in 8th grade mode. Or to make a horizontal vote, like the views are different in Kansas than they are in Nebraska.
Well, it's because their concerns are different.
Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a reason.
Talk about the differences.
Yeah, there's women, I think, with women, there's menstruation, there's child rearing. I think their circles are smaller. Their turnaround times are tighter, their loops are tighter. Whereas I think men who are, say, you're on your either battleship or horse with your lance, I'm kind of bringing up some like medieval kind of Old English vibes, maybe because I'm trying to like I see my name Jeffrey Lewis, named after Geoffrey Chaucer, who did Canterbury Tales, trying to make
Who
my
gives
century
a
great
shit
again.
about why? It's a beautiful image. Continue.
That the male has sense of the whole map, the whole earth, centuries, generations, succession planning out there. I mean, storytellers for sure, not saying women aren't. But I don't know, it's like the keeper of the myths, I mean, I think men have a patience to spend 10 hours. And again, I'm wrong about all of this, but like there's a patience to spend time in the library. Like you and I could geek out over numbers and stats and names, right? I mean, it's like men love stats, and women will get bored and they want to see pictures of babies, and they want to see pictures of the friends. They want to hear their friends. They want to be with their friends. Whereas you and I could probably, you could talk about it as a form of falling in love. That's maybe falling in love with like the work and the legacy and knowledge and values and stuff.
Experience with the eye, like that's what I was kind of getting at earlier. When I see something in my mind, when I see the vision, like going full circle poetically, the glimmer in your father's eye of it all, there is an Emersonian eye, distance, whatever the good guy version of Eye of Sauron is, it is a ranging, scouting, exploring impulse, which again, I do think in our current society that is transcending a gender binary, everyone can play with. Mimetically, we've had thousands of more years practice, and so now we're seeing a new set of people making that, but like we're also seeing some folk giving away like their birthright in ways where it's like, no, we're calling you into more mastery, not what do you call it, abdication. But like there's this eye aspect, and I'm thinking about it when I think about images, when I think about even the concept of like beauty, when I talk to like my female friends or people who are inhabiting feminine energy, or even when I'm inhabiting feminine energy in myself, it is embodied feeling. Suddenly I'm being told about textures. I'm being talked about the stuff with the hand. I was just talking with a sweetie last night about the separation of, okay, I'm sewing, but I'm also watching the TV. And I did a bad job. If you're hearing me, sweetie, like you're absolutely actually right, or at least I didn't digest the experience till right now. It's a modern innovation for someone to be doing handcrafts and watching a TV. And this is someone who has really strong masculine and feminine. And I wasn't able to put it together of like their masculine brain is on watching the TV while their feminine like part is doing like the handwork, and they can actually hold that in simultaneity. Because when
you can
I
do
see it a lot
both.
with the Marvel movies, I'll talk to people about Marvel movies, and I have some like feminine friends who love the Marvel movies, but they, without fail, will tell me my brain kind of turns off when the punchy boy stuff happens. Like they actually do a really good job at relating and making depth of characters in ways that keep them engaged. But when the boys start punching, it's not anything. But I've got friends who work in CGI, and I'm like, every frame of painting, every single one of these shots is beautiful and is touching, but is only touching to that like sort of mental eye transcendent masculine space. They're not designed to touch the heart. At best, the heart touching things end up being the music, the feeling of like emotional affect in the actors, the story, the resonance, and that the movies nowadays are actually doing a pretty good job of both, to the detriment sometimes of the masculine. A lot of people who are mad at Star Wars, these new Star Wars, I'm just like, I think you're a little bit mad because they're slightly more emotionally resonant and as a result simpler in plot, because that's who we're drawing into now, is that we can't just have laser boys and pew pews. We also have to have emotional connections that just weren't necessary in 77. That wasn't what the story was about. That was a masculine frame tale. And so I guess I'm curious about this, to rope it back around just to talk about why this is relevant, not just because it's coming up, but it's also the dance of how are we getting out of this house? What is the house that we're getting out of? And how do we play the piano with both hands of the seemingly like felt sense roles of the artistic impulse from craft to vision, and bringing those together where it's like, okay, if the masculine is speaking like the vision and the craft is like the aspect of like the feminine, how do we marry that within ourselves so that our Sisyphean boulder push feels like coming home to self and not like a dissociative experience?
Ooh, that's good. Oh, that's so good. Feels like
that's revenge for you making me feel a tender part of myself by talking about the beauty of the Valhalla masculine.
Well, you've still got me stuck on the lovely complexity of watching cartoons while doing handiwork. And this makes me think about the difference between creating and consuming. Whereas really the pattern is in all things. And there's really no race, because it's inevitable that you'll get there. And it's like you prove that you can actually do both. Like you can be working on the one bandwidth, which is consuming, learning, making a model and a sketch and a story and a notebook of all the facts of life, which happens through learning, consuming, witnessing. But also you're doing the practicing and I'm going to figure it out through doing and work on my hands, work on my motor skills. And that's actually, I don't want to call that double penetration, but there's a serious pleasure in, I mean, that's almost like true flow, is when consuming and creating are one, when in breath and out breath are one, when learning and studying and teaching and practicing are one, when there's no separation between functions. That's maybe that's has to be what being integrated means, when all the gears are turning at once. And I'm watching this Marvel movie, which was made by someone who was engaging with that pattern and thinking about story, and they're doing their version of it while I'm also doing mine. I mean, that's real. I mean, it makes me think about, total surrender in the sexual act, which is pretty wonderful. But it's also like a good soup coming together, and there's an erotics there. There's a sensuality that is like, oh, when I stand here closing my eyes making these shapes, knowing I look like a sculpture, it's like I declare I am here as part of this world. And it's like, it was never not the case, right? Anyone who thinks they're isolated, it's never the case. But everyone stumbles and steers into exile. And it's like, that's when things turn around. And it's like, this is the hero's journey. It's like you get in a corner and it's like, I'm just going to swim like hell. And it's like, even if you wake up, I mean, again, and it's like, I'm living this in a way. It's like, I wake up in this room and it's like, man, I got a long climb out because everything is going wrong in my life. And I've really steered myself into a corner, but I believe in myself. And it's like, you know what? This is the way the story goes, is that you lose everything you can lose. And you think that you are 2 inches from the drain and you're down to your final grocery trip, your last sandwich. And it's like that moment of just like, God, I'm not going to make it. That's actually what has to happen for you to really come in full touch with your love, your hate, your fear, your wonder, your story, your past, your vision, your sense of things. And I mean, I'll say, as a privileged white male creative who has earning potential, but chooses to not earn money and not make a safe life for myself and piss everyone in my life off profoundly, for this calling of art and voice and of writing. Because of course, becoming a writer is the most impossible thing you can do. And you become a monster. And I've absolutely become a monster. And now I'm a monster around the clock. And but that's what brings us together today, right? This is church in a sense. Like, we are gathered here today, being a monster. We are gathered here today to talk about being a monster. And we are, because we can't be stopped. It won't be stopped. We're not gonna stop. It can't stop. Won't stop. So what to do with this? And then you realize you are fire. You are water. Brings us back to the feminine, masculine. You know, feminine is that pure fire, water will go out to the edge. I think about Scorpio. That happens to be my sign. That I need boundaries so bad, because I will go up to that boundary. I will kiss that boundary. I will slither against that boundary. And I live in this like, which is a good place to live. Our sex lives are good. But yeah, I often think the masculine is the pipes, and we could bring it back to being, you know, an enlightened, illuminated father who doesn't lose touch with being the little kid. You have to do both. You have to be the little kid and the one who keeps us on the track. I want to jump in the pool versus, hold on, we need our snacks, we need our backpack, we need to check the time. Where do we need to be next?
It's the always is of, okay, sometimes the masculine is the vessel, it's the space holder, but sometimes the feminine is the vessel, it's the thing that contains the thing. And sometimes the masculine is penetrating liquid, but sometimes the feminine is it's like, even within this, there's a multitude that sort of comes down. And again, you get to decide which one feels most resonant at any given moment, which is beautiful. And even in that space, it's like, well, what monstrous thing is trying to be like born through you? As one of my favorite things is in this pivot, it's like, yeah, white man of privilege, boring. White man of power, interesting, because suddenly now the use of power is much more fascinating. Powerful people get to choose to not use the power. Ooh. That is actually an expression of the power, is to be a white man that doesn't use it, because otherwise everyone else has to even stay alive. The choice of using power when it's not a choice, when you have to do it to survive, again, isn't the game. In a lot of ways, you end up being the more interesting player, because suddenly it's like, actually, no, here's the example. I play Go. I love Go. It is the Chinese Japanese board game. China, it's Wei Chi, and in Japan, it's Go. But there's a story, bunch of white stones, black stones, doesn't matter. I'm just painting an image in your brain. But there's a story of a man playing with his friend. They play Go all the time. The guy is one of the men is a renowned Go player. The other guy is like a pretty good amateur. But every day these guys play Go together, and every day the amateur wins by 1 point. Every day. This goes on for years, and then eventually the amateur gets a little cocky, starts talking shit. It's just like, oh, you know, that guy's like, I know he's a renowned world Go player, but like, you know, he's not that great. He's like, why? He's like, well, I beat him every single time. They're like, how much do you beat him by? He's like, oh, I beat him by 1 every time. It's like, great. And everyone's like, oh, you're beating the guy? Like, oh, that's fucking dope. Oh, that's great. Eventually word gets around. the renowned Go player hears, and it's just like, "Hey, you've been talking shit," and then it's like, "Well, yeah, but like I'm just saying what's true. Like I beat you every day by 1 point." He's like, "All right, let's play a game right now." They get at the board, crushes him in 10 moves, crushes him in 20 moves, crushes, just like game after game after game. The renowned player destroys that person. It's like, what's happening? How did this happen? He's like, do you know how hard it is to lose by 1 every single time without fail? You don't play the same game every time. I'm adapting to yours and losing by 1. I think about that when I think about like mastery, when I think about even like sort of the master, it is this infinitely adaptable place, but there's also like a precision that's like sort of necessary. There's like a holding, but there's also like a withholding. And so if there is a game of like power, let's say the power of the feminine is the like expression, the sort of chaotic expression of spontaneity, like truly does seemingly come from the feminine. That inside out spontaneity, that feels like feminine energy. It feels like it to me when sometimes I'm just like, it's just here. The idea, the feeling, it's here, I'm doing it. But revelation feels like it's the masculine, where it doesn't feel inside out. It feels like a bolt from the blue, the thing that sort of smashes down. And so then the question becomes, in one's ranging, the inner masculine for anyone who's playing with the feminine energy is just like, okay, cool. How do you make a safe container for this thing that's going to wellspring, that's going to bubble up? That's your inner masculine's job. And your outer masculine's job is to, how do you become a good seer, finder of those bolt from the blue experiences? And if you want to court the feminine in that, in yourself, outside yourself, is which ones do you choose that will bring an inner emotional creative delight to have found? What I'm hearing so much in this tech and sort of your discuss, and even my discuss with it, is that we've got a bunch of masculine energy who have found success structures, but that bring them no joy. They found it. They won the game of finding like, where's the lightning hitting, the Web3, They did it. They did their job, but they selected a set of things that does nothing for their interiority.
Well, no, because all you can do is build a hill. That's all anyone can do. And it's like, you're going to build your hill and you're going to walk it. You're going to be Sisyphus. That's the deal. You can't engineer and design and sell and build and connive your way to not being Sisyphus. You're going to be Sisyphus. That's the story, no matter who you are. So it's like, get good at pain, get good at longing, get good at wanting. I mean, eventually all there is you have to understand want and the horizon, and you have to somehow tell yourself stories. You have to keep yourself company as you march.
But let's delve deeper. I'm with that, but there's one more layer that I'm trying to point at, which is the point of stories is for that emotional stirring. The thing that Almas gets into that I really enjoy is there is, at a base level, at a base embodied, again, I'm going to call it feminine level, a pleasure to feel anything. So if you're Sisyphus, you're pushing the thing up, you're constantly being pulled in with sensation, and your stories about the boulder are going to give you a certain set of feelings. And Sisyphus is in hell when the feelings are, I am in toil, I'm in struggle, I hate this is terrible. But even in that, if they delve a set deeper to the body of like, body, what is the experience of even having these emotions inside yourself? Body goes, that's what aliveness is, BB.
Yeah.
Slight pivot. Okay, let's say that your story about the boulder is, I love this boulder. This is my practice. This is my discipline. I'm amazing. It's fantastic. And suddenly the aches and pains of the body are actually turning into a heart-centered joy. And you ask the body, how's it feel to be feeling this experience? And you'd be absolutely right to be like, that's just aliveness, BB. But you can still choose one over the other. You're on both sides, you're going to get stuck. Like, it's still a boulder, and your body is inherently going to be chill with whatever the hell happens. But there's some weird thing called the human spirit that lives in between that for whatever reason, at least in our culture right now, is over-privileging the suffer experience, even though the outcome is going to be the same, even if they choose the delicious, I like it. And I'm going to go ahead and put a big highlighter on it, an embodied, healthy, emergent, feminine deliciousness, sensuousness of the process of being. It's still being ignored. It's still being ignored in a way that I'm just like, honestly, like, it makes the goals that you seek after sort of better, like that internal satisfaction. Like the masculine doesn't know how to really do it. It's always the ranging, it's always the next thing, it's always the yearning. The horizon's like beautiful, but like masculine struggles to arrive. And then you do the flip side, the feminine struggles to like seek in certain ways. And so of course anyone hearing this is going to be like, well, hold on, I arrive all the time as masculine. Like, good job, you probably got some really involved feminine energy inside you. It's amazing. Feminine is like, I seek all the time. I'm like, amazing, that means you're seeking this other thing. Like humans, these weird bodies that we have, these emotional concepts that we build for ourselves, they're fantastic, but they're also just as made up. And so in your weird chessboard, you can decide you're playing all bishops. That's a weird thing to do. Or you can say, I'm going to play all like a game is also still an agreement, even as you're choosing to play or choosing not to play, even as you set up like your game board. It's just like, you could just play a weird game of chess. No one's going to stop you. The game might be pissing people off by playing a weird game of chess with them. It's like, okay, or you can play the game of chess they do expect with them. Constantly seeking out that choice point and being able to hold as much like affect inside yourself when you get it. That's the closest thing that I have to a game that feels like fun playing. Like even when I'm like, I'm not really succeeding at this like value game, there is this other game that I am like really good at. And like my new meta game is just like, now kiss, is there an interface spot that I can make these two parts interface? And of course, even when I say that metaphor, I'm like, well, they're not really doing that much wooing to each other. It does feel like I am playing with the toys and being like, Barbie and Ken, go.
Right. Well, there's so much good stuff here, man. Yeah, I mean, you made me think when you're talking about the body, which, poetry is a lot about the body, especially the further you go and the longer you last as a poet, when you really dare to be romantic on main and really dare to be sexy on main. I mean, a real artist at heart is someone who has to dance naked in public, which can take us, we can take that metaphorically. We can go back historically of what happened around the fire, right? People did art around the fire because their warriors were wounded and killed and taken, and that the band came home from war, and there was a woman there in town who was nursing a baby all day, and his man is gone, or worse. When they saw it happen, they saw what the other tribe did to that guy, pulled out his teeth, pulled out his limbs, chopped off his whatever. And it's very serious. That's a deep, deep wound that has to be healed. And it's very serious healing work that happens around the fire because there's nothing to do but keep going. We could talk about it being Kafkaesque, that you're going to lose and you have to go lose. That's the story around the fire some nights. We're lucky in this world. It wasn't lucky 200 years ago, 300, 400 or more years ago, where it's like, we're going to lose the rest of our guys tomorrow because they're coming, or there's nowhere else to go but there, and we know we're going to lose.
Well,
we know we're going to get pulled apart.
The fucked up beauty of the masculine, and it is fucked up, and we are at this like Jungian around the fire archetypal thing. The masculine's disposable. That's a lesson that I do think is very difficult for the feminine to like appreciate right now. I'm like, here's the game here, if you're gonna go and range out to the wilderness and play this game, is to get ate by tigers every fucking day, to run across a wrong tribe and get got. That's what we sort of sign up for, and that's what we do for the collective. This aloneness thing that we're talking about is the fact that we are in simultaneously like in and of ourselves our own collective. And so the paradox of the fact that I contain multitudes and I am singular is the affront to I'm an individual inside a collective. And I'm like, yeah, but what's inside the individuals inside the collective? And we don't stop the conversation there. But the essential nature, the font of life that comes from the feminine is also the healing thing for the masculine. Just like, no, you are not as disposable as you think. If the masculine touch with their feminine is the artist, it's like, we need you here to make your art. It is not a literal, thriving, writhing child, but it is a world. It is the Kevin Feige and his damn Marvel Cinematic Universe. Those worlds are emergent. The beautiful thing about the Kafkaesque I must lose, that's a fucking line from Doctor Strange. He's a selfish asshole, and his turning point is, I can't win, Dormammu, but I can lose. I can lose forever and bring my time-bound experience into your infinite nothingness, which traps you into hell. You literally, for the first time, you see a smarmy white dude learn non-Jesus way the art of self-sacrifice, of infinite torment to save the world. And I'm like, you put this in a movie with the Punchy Boys? Holy fuck. That's a beautiful thing. And I think both of us are like, and by both of us, I do think the integration of masculine and feminine energy, the intersubjective space between that, if you can hold it within yourself, the alchemical pot, if there's a way out, at least of that crisis, it is that sort of in-between space. It is the learning to play the piano with both hands. There's no such thing as the sinister left hand. There's no evil left hand. It's always just gonna be the opposite of what the hell we're supposed to do anyway. Put them together, learn how to put on a show. But it is reconciling the fact that just like there is a meaninglessness to the pursuit of the masculine. It's why we seek it out so hard, because we know if we don't seek the horizon, we're just another body to get eaten by lions or another thing to get killed by another tribe. Like if we don't find something new to bring to the tribe, just like the draft dodgers, it's just like, if you're not adding something culturally significant to this shit, we are sending you into this shit, the end. And right now there is this push for like, oh, gender equality. I'm like, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. I absolutely think we should do it. But it doesn't quite bring out like these deep woundings that come from the fact that like there is this like importance that has been perverted and used in hideous patriarchal ways as a violence against women. But it's the jealousness of their essentialness that I feel like causes us to do that shit. Look at that shit and you're like, you bitch, you fucking matter and I don't.
Wow.
That would make sense. When I tap into that brain, I'm like, yeah, I'd be pissed as hell about that shit. You're telling me that me and my amigos are gonna die tomorrow because I can't have a baby? I didn't pick that. I just showed up here, man.
Wow, that right there, man, you really just described where domestic violence comes from. The man is so furious that he's disposable and she's not. Wow, dude. Oh, Lord. Wow, that's a knockout.
Well, what I will say to this, because we could, again, I think we've got the stamina to keep going. This has got to be digestible. This is podcast. This is Brain Friends. But when you answer the question, as we move and range from this to bring everyone back into benediction, as we keep doing this exploring, this is what we are talking about when we talk about value, when we talk about art, when we talk about creativity and the internet. What is it? I don't know. We talked about it for almost an hour and a half and still came to nowhere, but this is at least the energetic mimetic soup that we're starting from. Here's the ranging that we can go. Here's the size of the world. We went to tropics. We went to fucking glaciers. We went down in some pits. We went to a island. Like, at least for me, like the place that becomes most interesting is that I'm a conscious world builder. Like when I have my other podcast, World Building with Wendell, it's very in the masculine mode. It's very in the like, we're going to make charts and we're going to do the stuff. We're going to create statistics. We're going to engineer this experience. The thing that is, as I'm even reflecting, that's coming alive for me in this is that aspect of like, yeah, but then there's the juice of the world building. There's even just modeling the size of like what connection can do, of what creativity can do when given appropriate space in intersubjective space, in sort of creation, in sort of like polarity. It feels interesting at the very least.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, like when I think about like, okay, what do I want the audience to get from this? Just like, yes, the sense of expansion, not just of the mind, but of the heart, and then a yearning to fill that with something and being like, I'll take your money for that. Hey, if that is a value to you, if coming home to yourself in a larger way means something and you want to support that continuing to happen, I do think over time the conversation is going to move into like, how do we do that without, and I think you brought this up in the previous conversation, Jeff, without commodifying ourselves, without being small to do things.
Well, the drop grows happiest in the ocean. Now, this is maybe the hard thing, is do we consent to being owned? And can commodityness, right? I mean, my art voice, everything I've done online for the last 10 years is about the hilarity of ha ha ha, like I'm still maintaining a commodified version of me that you could buy and really might at any moment snap into alignment and say, you know what? It's Monday, October 3rd. I have hundreds of dollars left. You know what? I am looking for copywriter roles. I'm ready to kiss the ring again. Mwah. I used to love selling. I then hated selling. I love selling again. I am here for you to win the war of make number go up. And I might believe it. I might believe it. I might be ready to kill my darling art life. And I might be ready to bow down and kiss the ring and put on the chainmail, put on the sword. Let's go fight against really mediocre, boring people in their emails and meetings. And they go 100 times slower than me because I've been an outsider. I've learned how to flop, flop, flop fast. But maybe not. Maybe being humbled is good. And really, that's the masculine story of, have I been humbled enough? Can I be humbled anymore? Should I go more? Is there more? Oh God, there's more.
My role player brain can't help but saying that, of just like, even in that story, the shift is overcoming the existential dread and terror that comes from the fact that I just woke up someday and everyone started telling me everything, versus the power of being like, I'm back, but I'm back having seen everything that I've seen, and I'm back with goals that you might think are aligned with yours, but you'll never know because you can't speak the language of outside the walls. Even as you said it, I was like, that sounds fun. And when I think about the role playing of it all, of just like, to you go into a fake place and you play a fake character, but the degree to the quality of the experience that you'll have is the degree to which you can forget that you've done it in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Forgetting is the thing I can't do. I think if I have one criticism of me as a writer and an artist, it's that I can't forget. And that I try to write and make stuff to forget, but there are things I can't forget. And so you then have to be like, God damn it, I have to. And I mean, this is the challenge, certainly of memoir, certainly of if you want to do personal writing for a living, again, back to that living, you have to go back and meet your demons again. You thought you were done. You thought you were done with that relationship from 9 years ago. You thought you were done. You'd like to be done. I know you want to be done. You're sick of it. And if you really want to be done with it,
like to be done, still sees them as a demon. But when you actually grow up, it's just
yes.
like, oh, what's up, Chaz? Oh, I thought you were this demon the whole time. It's
she's
like,
a princess, and she always will be one. She's timeless to me, and I hope she knows it.
But that makes her art. Now she's arts, which of course is exactly.
She was art from the beginning. You don't have a relationship with a male writer in his 20s. Don't, because he can't see you. He sees you're elegant, you're beautiful, you're perfect, golden bangles, but he can't see you. He sees the image of you. But I also think young women, we'll say, have the same challenge of they can't separate essence from surface.
I was about to say, my not nearly old enough to have this experience is just like, but the opposite is just as insane. When you finally learn the skills to be able to see someone and you're reflected to them, I was like, I see you, and they're like, I hate that, and I go, well, which one is it, friend? Projected image of your impossible excellence and beauty, or choosing to love whatever I see and holding it in like good spot? And it's like, well,
it's probably an and. It's probably an and.
Probably an and. The
but
question is, how do you reflect that in a way that shows the inherent beauty of that? And who do you show up to?
Who do you show it to?
That type of gift.
Well, that's the funny thing. I mean, like, that's why, like, there's a really good poem by a guy named W.S. Merwin called Elegy. And it's simply this: who would I show it to? Because then you go and you do, and this is the bad thing about being kind of like dripped and dipped in the world of sales and marketing, is you understand your control. And it's like, God dang, if I am now aware of this level of control, right? We have this thing, right? And now it's like, well, we both got to go out the door and sell it, give it away to somebody and tell them what it is. It's like, well, everyone is doing that. And you get, like, this is why I think they say like don't trust anyone over 30, because they're running the self-preservation script. And everybody knows when you're on the branded stage and mentioning this, it's like, how many times can you say, so grateful and honored to be featured by this big pile of money that many people have sworn moral allegiance to and keep propping up because they can't or don't want to think harder about what their responsibility really is. And it's like all this, and I know that I'm othering and separating myself from this, and it's all just making me a longer swim, right? I've given myself so
Well,
much
here's the
trouble.
thing.
I write myself down far and I need to swim back up to get back to the
Like
center.
swimming, you've got actually a very specific crisis, not to all right, I'll keep it on my side of the court. I'm gonna say something.
Tell me about my specific crisis. This is
No,
a
I'm
story
telling you
I
about
love
my
to hear.
stuff, and I'm gonna talk about how we're the same. It's not just that you're a poet, it's not just that you're an artist, but you're also a fucking champion. That's the fucking hard mix. It's like, you are a swimmer. You like swimming. Don't look me in the face and be like, oh, I know I'm just making the swim harder. I'm like, yes, so that when you do it, everyone else who did a shorter swim, fuck them. That's the actual hard part, is like, how do you pursue excellence and expression at the same time? It's insane. The expression is always as excellent as it's going to be, but there is a constant emerging created experience of newness, of upness, of spontaneity, of expansiveness, of what have you is it. We know it's there because every time we touch it for that brief second, we're like, hell yeah, it's fucking tight. Then we do it again, hell yeah, that's fucking tight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, this brings me back to what I was saying before we started recording, which was this idea of like being a ball player, warming up on the field, like smiling. And it's like, well, when you're there, you're not taking selfies because you don't need to, because you know that the thing you're about to do is going to be the thing that actually makes you, $15 million a year if you're the shortstop for the San Francisco Giants, for example. That warming up, it's like, let other people document. Right? It's like, I'm here getting ready. And it's like, you've arrived at this place of being a champion. It's like, you know what? There's other people who can only write and take pictures. They can't do what I do. That's why they're up there watching. That's why I'm the essence. I'm the subject and they're the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very juicy dynamic of even writer versus editor, of like, who's got, I mean, it's an interesting power struggle, and like there's a status and even a class thing at play, right? And again, I find people telling me, oh, I'm not an artist, like even you self-canceled, even you said that you only wrote one song, and it was a bit, and it's like you're even trying to avoid being judged. And it's like, maybe everybody has this, at least everybody in our part of Twitter, our circle of people who are maybe all drenched in the same things. But yeah, I mean, how to be essence and how to be the reporter on it. And it's like, maybe being the thing is enough. That's what athletes do. It's like, LeBron doesn't need to control the story. He is it. And they come talk to him after in the locker room. And it's like, I know I'm not afraid because you can't control me, and I play by the rules, and I make $30 million a year, and you're here talking to me. That's your job. You're getting paid, and also 90K. I'm getting paid 30 mil. What's up now? What's up now?
Also, executive producer of Space Jam 2, the sassy gay friend in Trainwreck. Even LeBron has its own self-transcendence. Even LeBron knows that the end of LeBron is a new beginning of moguldom, and he's already setting those goddamn seeds. Yes. And so it is this, I do think it's this multiplicity game. It is the fact that, like, yes, you are subject and object. There is a collapse. The degree to which one is privileged over the other is the degree to which either you will have to give that role to someone else, which makes you subject to them, even though you are the object, or you learn, again, I'm going to come back to that metaphor because it's so alive for me, or you play the piano with both hands and be something monstrous because left-handedness is fucked. We're still in that meme of, no, pick your smallness versus how do you synergize your partiality?
How do you centralize? You didn't say that.
Synergize. I went for the most fucking corporate word I could grab my hand.
Centralize your, like, disparate pieces, what did you say?
Partiality. So again, one is I will purposefully be small and whole versus I will be disparate but integrated.
Wow. Freedom. I mean, like that, I mean, this is the irresistible temptation of what we're like. We are calling other on fire, unemployed people who are like, this is the gold, like this is the gold rush. Essentially what you and I are doing, this thing that you and I have found is the gold. And there's a gold rush of, I can be an online poster too. I can just go burr for a living. I can just like surrender. Like I like the image of Goku and his head like on fire, like I will somehow my way to food, water, shelter. And I am not gonna go be, and again, it comes back to a chip on the shoulder of, you know, maybe maybe parents said, you will do law, medicine, engineering, business, something real, a real job. And I think it's just the disobedient, mischievous inner child that's like,
well, you said it was perfect. I don't know if it got on the recording, but the adult is really just a 4-year-old that's got 30 years.
Yeah.
That resonates. That brings it full around. I do a whole shameless plug. I do a whole practice on introducing yourself to your inner child, and literally the end of the practice is, now how do you let that motherfucker be the CEO instead of it being the subject of protection? If that thing's the thing that you're doing this shit for, how the hell do you get your protector control? What would you protect if the inner child's job was to be a main stage? You're the bouncer now, not a tower hider of Rapunzel or what have you. Even that frame becomes like powerful, because at the very least you would die having a good time. Like you can't actually promise that they like, but how would you want to come to the fact that like that is an absurd thing to die? The worst version of it, and that's what we're kind of running into, this anxious, depressive death, slow death that our parents and society is doing, is the fact that it's like, I did everything right and I'm still miserable, versus I did everything right and my death is coming sooner, but at least I enjoyed the experience. I think fucking solipsism, of which probably a new episode will go too in depth in it, but the answer that came from me is, if it turns out I truly am just a brain in a jar, like what can it get worse than that? And the answer was yes. An unhappy brain in a jar.
Yeah. Well, because we are all brains in a jar. And again, like the internet's a fascinating place, you know. I mean, media is, I guess, what it is, which is just art, which always brings people together. Like you and I found each other, and yeah, you're a brain in a jar, I'm a brain in a jar. And it's like, we know the absurdity of, and again, I've followed a lot of the literary world, poets, writers, and they've got bylines, they've got published books, everyone's got stuff coming out. You know, I speak so well of this world because part of me wanted to be in it, and part of me is mad that they haven't came and got me. But I think everyone has a very not bittersweet, but there's a mix of love and hate of the place that you know you'll belong to. Like there's a hatred of the people you know you'll belong with for their waiting so long. It's like, what I was seeking was seeking me, but it's like, yo, like, why didn't you seek it? It's like, well, I didn't seek it the right way. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be outsider. And it's like, well,
you got it.
This is a funny thing. It's like, are you willing to trade outsider for the actual ability to live? And it's like, those coming together, it's always going to be shameful and embarrassing. And it's like, well, the most shameful time to do that is on your deathbed. The second most shameful time is now. The third was 10 years ago.
Oh, what a pivot. For all you who aren't versed in Chinese proverbs, we just got a beautiful twist on the old classic of the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. But an inversion, a white man's inversion of it. That's poetry, baby. That's good. We're going no further than that. Spay new to your pets, everybody. Until next time.
Okay.
It's been us. Hell.